Hi, my name's Vince Sheehan and today I'd like to talk about 1984 by George Orwell. I'd like to go through the themes and the structure of this novel. Now this 1984 was published in June 1949, just a few months before Orwell himself died in 1950. And it's a work that's never ceased to fascinate, terrify, shock people. Even today, 70 plus years later, you could probably argue actually that it's more relevant today than it ever has been. And I might just talk about that a little bit nearer the end of the video. But 1984, I guess if you could sum it up in a sentence, is about a questioning individual being forced to conform with a totalitarian regime's worldview. That's the trajectory the novel traces. It's set in London, which in 1984 is part of Airstrip 1, which is part of this larger territory called Oceania. And Oceania competes with these other superpowers around the globe. And Oceania is run by INGSOC, this party, short for English Socialism, and at the head of it is Big Brother. Big Brother is this sinister figure. You see his image everywhere, and he is watching you. How does he watch you? He watches you through telly screens. So the thought police, who are there, this sinister organisation to apprehend people in the dead of night without any warning, are there to check what people are doing, what they're saying. And the thought police just are able to spy on everybody in their homes and outside of their homes through these telly screens. INGSOC, the party, does its best to brainwash the population with propaganda. There's these 2 minutes of hate sessions where people just shout and swear at images of their enemies in cinemas, and it's a terrifying, bleak, paranoid vision of the future. And in this grey and dreary and terrifying world, we meet Winston Smith. Winston Smith is writing a diary. Winston Smith, who actually works for the party, he's part of the outer party. He works for the Ministry of Truth, and his job is basically just to rewrite history. He goes through old newspapers and just changes the facts according to what the party wants at that time, according to the message of the party at that moment. And he's very good at his job, and he does that day in, day out. And part one, there's 2 parts of this book. Part 1 is really about Winston Smith, getting to know him and knowing that really Winston Smith is not happy with the party. He hates the party. He's managed to get hold of this diary with a pen, which he hides in his flat, and just out of shot of the telly screen, he hopes anyway, he starts to write a diary. And he's beginning to let his true thoughts come out onto the page. Down with Big Brother, he writes over and over again. Dangerous stuff if anyone finds it. And at work he realises that there's this guy who might be a potential ally called O'Brien. There's something about O'Brien which he thinks, he might be someone who might know something of the fabled Brotherhood. The Brotherhood is this mysterious organisation which was started by this guy called Goldstein, who was there who was a bit like Trotsky, I suppose, in Stalinist Russia. He was this guy who was a pivotal player at the beginning, but edged out. Apparently Goldstein heads this mysterious Brotherhood, and Smith thinks that O'Brien might be part of this. There's something about him. Also, Smith notices this girl who he takes a real dislike to. We'll find out more about her a bit later on. So Smith is in this unhappy world with these rebellious thoughts in his mind. But Smith knows that if there is any hope for the future of Oceania, it lies in the proles. These are the workers, the working class. They're more of an underclass. They kind of live their lives getting drunk, brawling. It's quite a stereotypical depiction of working class people, it has to be said. But and Winston Smith sees something of some freedom in them and some potential in the sheer numbers of them to change things, if only they could get their act together. Winston Smith also meditates on the disapproval of the party of, sex, any kind of pleasure, any individuality. All this Smith dwells on, and it kind of fuels his hatred of the party even more. Eventually Smith goes to a pub, meets this working class older guy who he tries to find out a bit more about things, how things used to be. He doesn't get much success from him. But then Smith in the Proles Quarter finds this old antique shop, and the proprietor, Mr. Charrington, seems this charming old man, and he invites Smith in, and there doesn't seem to be a telly screen there. Smith is rather taken with this place. There's a sense of nostalgia, a sense of freedom, a sense of safety about this place. And Smith buys a paperweight and he goes back. So that's basically part one of this story. Part two, which takes us to the end of the novel, is more about Smith and this girl Julia. Winston Smith is married, but it's a loveless marriage. But he starts meeting up with Julia, this girl he hates, and he begins to realise that actually she's very much on his wavelength. She hates the party too. So they start this affair, and eventually they end up in that upper room in that antique shop in the run by Charrington in the Proles Quarter. That's like their kind of love nest, if you like. And then in the meantime at work, Winston Smith finally encounters O'Brien. O'Brien approaches him and very secretly tells him to meet him with Julia. So Julia and Winston Smith meet O'Brien in his place, and O'Brien's in the inner party. He's a powerful figure, but he seems to have a real hatred for the party as well. Indeed, he seems to be high up in the Brotherhood, and he's briefing Julia and Winston. They should be willing to do anything to topple this regime. And Winston and Julia agree, and eventually Winston is given this book describing in detail what the party really is, the true history of the party, how it really operates, how it interacts with the other territories around it, how much of the war is really just a game so that the territories can just keep hold of what they have and have control over their populations. Eventually in this terrifying scene, Winston and Julia are betrayed by Charrington and they're arrested by the Thought Police. Charrington himself is really an agent for the Thought Police. And Winston and Julia are separated. Winston is then taken to a cell and he's interrogated and tortured by O'Brien. Yes, O'Brien of course really is high up in the Thought Police, and he realised that Smith was a potential rebel, and he's got him where he wants him. And O'Brien really here is revealed as a true ideologue for this regime. You know, he's just completely hardwired into this INGSOC propaganda, and Smith still harbours onto this belief in the truth that certain things just can't be changed. 2 and 2 always has to be 4. It can't be 5. and O'Brien is just there trying to break Smith, trying to tell him that we can change the facts. Truth can just be changed. Facts can be changed. Language can be changed. Eventually Winston his mind is broken, but there's one thing he's yet to do, which is betray Julia. He won't do that. That's the one vestige of humanity he seems to have left. But then he's taken to room 101 and he's faced with his greatest fear, rats right up to his face. And in his terror, he betrays Julia. He says, "Do it to Julia, not to me, just take him away from me." And taken away from him. The book, and then at the end of the book, Winston's released, he meets Julia, but they've both betrayed each other. The relationship is completely destroyed. They've been destroyed as people, essentially. And we realise that right at the very end of the novel, Winston's reconditioning is complete. And he finally admits that he loves Big Brother. So what are we to make of this book? Well, of course, when Orwell wrote this, it was very much a reflection of the terror of Stalinist Russia, and you can see that in this. But the book will never lose relevance because there will always be people who want to change the truth. And it seems this book outlines the perils of rejecting absolute truth. It seems if you say this is the truth, even though it isn't, if you're powerful enough, you can make it the truth. That seems to be one of the themes in this novel. You know, and if you look at a regime today like North Korea, of course, that does that all the time. But also perhaps in less insidious ways in Western society. The idea of language, the power of language is an important theme. Newspeak is basically a debased form of English, taking out the richness and the complexity of language, and thus by doing that, altering the way people think into a far more simplified and easily controlled way. This idea of continuous surveillance, of being watched wherever you are, again, very apt for 21st century Western civilization. There's a theme of memory as well. Winston, you know, as the book progresses, he thinks he has these memories which are coming to the surface of his mother and how he treated her. He questions an older prole about his memories of the past. There's a sense of the value of memory, the value of tradition in safeguarding the present and the future. So 1984, a very powerful and shocking read, and something that I don't think will lose its relevance anytime soon. If you haven't read it, read it. If you have read it a long time ago, reread it like I did recently. Thanks for watching. Bye.